Yeah, so today we are going to learn very interesting things about deaf culture and sign language. Okay, so are you able to see my screen? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So today we are going to learn about the correct terminology which we have to use with the deaf, and also the misconceptions about deaf, and introduction to the sign language. And at the end, we have an activity, something very interesting. We are all going to learn some alphabet and common phrases in the Indian sign language. So without any delay, let's get started. So when we meet someone who uses sign language or a person who is deaf, people tend to use different types of words or terminology. So we have some visually impaired participants as well with us. So I would like to read what is there. Like people tend to use the words like retarded, person with hearing and speech impairment, person with disability, hearing impaired, specially abled, disabled, handicapped, deaf, deaf and mute, person who is hard of hearing, deaf and dumb. So, which words are correct? What are the accepted terms we can use when we meet someone who is deaf?
I think it's deaf.
Okay,
Hearing impaired?
thank you. Anyone else? Any more opinions?
Person, person who is hard of hearing.
Thank you.
A disabled person,
Thank you so much.
Person
Deaf,
with hearing and a speech impairment.
Okay,
deaf.
okay. So we all have different opinions, right? So let's see whether you got it right or not, whether we have used the right terminology or not. So these are the accepted terms like deaf, person with disability, person who is hard of hearing, person with hearing and speech impairment. So these words are accepted by the deaf community. If you use these words, they will not get offended. And also it is accepted by the companies as well. And there are words like deaf and mute, retarded, handicapped, deaf and dumb. We cannot use these words. They are not accepted. We cannot use retarded because they are not retarded. We cannot use deaf and dumb because they are not dumb. They are just deaf. Because of the media portrayal, people tend to use these type of words. So we always stick to the accepted terms when we see someone who is a deaf or a person who is using the sign language. And coming to the some misconceptions about the deaf, people think all deaf people can lip read. If we speak with them slowly and loudly, they will understand. It is possible for them to communicate with the deaf people. No, that's not possible. And coming to the second point, all deaf also people think like they are everyone who is a deaf knows sign language. No, that's not possible because some deaf they did not get access to learn the sign language. They didn't have any deaf friends, or they have grown in a close community where they interacted with only the speaking people rather than the sign language speaking people. So they didn't get a chance to learn the sign language. And coming to the next misconception which people has, sign language is just a translation of English. No, it's not. It's not that way. Just like any other language, like Hindi or Tamil or German, French, many other languages, just in same way, sign language is also another language by itself, and it has its own grammar rules. And also people think that all sign languages are same. No. uh, for example, just to give you one difference, in Indian sign language we use two-handed alphabet, and in US, like American sign language, they use single-handed alphabet. And there are many types of sign languages, more than 100. So not all sign languages are same. And also people think that deaf can be trained to speak. No, that's not possible, because a deaf person has become a deaf at, like each deaf person has become deaf in different stages of their life. And also each deaf has their different percentage of deafness. And some people say they can be trained to speak, but maybe that has to be done at the early stage of their deafness. But once they cross that stage, the only source of communication will be sign language. And one more thing is, you need to know sign language to communicate with a deaf person. Yeah, maybe to some extent that is true. You need to know sign language, but you need not know complete language to communicate with them. Just as an example, if you meet a person with you know a different who speaks different language, maybe a German language, you want to convey something to him or her, and then you don't know the language, will you still stop? No, you will try to convey that message, right? You will use different signs, different body language, and then you use expressions, and most possibly you will take your phone, Google the images of the thing which you want to convey and show the images, right? Still the communication is possible. In the same way, if you want to communicate with a deaf person, you can use all this. You can use body language, signs, images, pictures. Even learning basics of the sign language will help. But what we have understood, what we have observed is a deaf person understands better when a person speaks in the sign language. So the best way to speak with them or communicate with them is by learning sign language, and a deaf person learning proper English. So this method will help them, help the community to be more inclusive. And coming to the introduction to sign language, we have seen there is diversity in sign language across the world, right? Like one example I can give you. In India, we use food sign for like this, and in US it changes because they eat with the spoon, and in Japan they eat with chopsticks. So the sign for food changes, right? So it's widely diversified. Yeah, there are more than 100 languages, sign languages around the world. And coming to the Indian Sign Language has been recognized as an official language of India, and it is very young language. It's still growing, it's dynamic. So it will soon be standardized. So till now we have learned a lot of things. Now coming to the activity part, please note that WinVinayaFoundation.org learn sign language. That website helps you to learn the basics of the Indian Sign Language. So if you're planning to learn sign language, surely visit that website. But coming to the deaf sign culture, so usually how deaf think. For example, if I say a word apple, a speaking person usually thinks like apple, APPLE, but deaf person imagines it. An image of an apple comes to his mind, so it is an imaginary language. So it's completely different culture, right? And it's interesting too. And deaf people, they like to talk. You may feel that it's very, if I try to talk, then they may not talk. No, don't feel that way. They really love to talk, because most of the time, since their childhood, they're not given an opportunity to share their opinion and their feelings. But when you start talking, they'll keep on talking. They love to talk. You can just try it out. And also, they don't expect pity from you, so no need to show pity. Instead, you can continue talking with them. Just strike a conversation with them. And then people think that usually hands are enough to do the sign language. No, use your face, body language, and also expressions, convey the message. You can you have to use all that. You can practice some facial expressions as well, using the keyboard emojis. Maybe after the session, give it a try. And one more thing we have to keep it in mind is that we have to use simple written English, because it might be a little difficult for the deaf. So when you are trying to talk with a deaf person, if you're using written language, then use it in simple English. Maybe today some of you will start speaking with some deaf persons. Maybe you'll make girlfriends and boyfriends as well. Just kidding. But try to talk with them and be more inclusive. So now I have a very difficult question for all of you. Ready? Okay. What is the sign for thank you? What is the sign for thank you? Wow, many people are doing it. So let's all give a big round of applause. Claps. Thank you so much. Thank you.